we're going to be talking about strategic practices that small businesses can use to ensure liquidity amidst the unstable economic landscape that exists today, strategies and options for small businesses in seeking loans, and then strategies and best practices for small businesses to prepare to seek the financing options and opportunities amidst the crisis. Question one is around what steps should small businesses take to ensure liquidity amid the uncertain economic landscape?
Yeah, and I think that obviously the first source of liquidity is looking at how you can shore up your own balance sheet, look for ways to reduce expenses, tighten things, just like you would in your own personal finances when the situation becomes a little more certain and all of a sudden your income or revenue is at risk. You start looking for ways to save and cut back in expenses and try to figure out ways that you can do more with less. So similarly, for small businesses, they have to do the same thing. They have to look at their operations. Are there things that they can do without in this time? I think that through the pandemic, a lot of us, and most of us, have been working many times remotely, had to kind of adapt and do things very differently. In the process, we noticed that we had an opportunity to notice that a lot of things that we were doing and carrying, expenses that we were carrying, that all of a sudden we've realized that perhaps are not so needed. So it's an opportunity for small businesses to look at those and say, do we really need this to continue operating? And that's a quick way for you to start, shoring up your liquidity. Obviously, there's other things and those tend to be the easier things, and variable expenses such as travel and entertainment if you were entertaining clients, and subscriptions and dues and this and that. You can look at those things over time, for instance, but then you also need to look at your cost structure, the more fixed costs associated to your operation. Is there a chance to go back to and talk to the landlord to try to see if you can negotiate some type of reduction in your occupancy? If you own your own property, is there a way, an opportunity to refinance your property? And sadly, also you have to take a look at whether you need to streamline the operations and perhaps operate with fewer employees. Every single step you take there obviously preserves liquidity for the business and allows you to continue to operate. And those are very short-term things that you can do. Obviously, we'll be talking about other sources of liquidity for the business, but at least immediately, those are things that businesses can start doing on their own and improving their own sources of funds. So I don't know, what do you think, Eli? What are your thoughts in that particular area?
Look, I think you hit on very, very important points with respect to the cost structure of a business and the opportunity that you have to evaluate all these different elements of what you've been spending on and looking to tighten the belt, so to speak. Liquidity, as we mentioned earlier, it's incredibly important. That's the lifeblood of your business, and that's what will help you keep you going through a crisis and all of the implications that are coming from it. So I think you're right. Cost structure and easy cost structure assessment and reductions are very much within the reach of what a business can do, and within the concepts that we all use on a daily basis to manage our own lives. I think the important thing is also, as you're looking to implement these plans, is first thing is to understand where you really are, right? And back to your analogy of your personal life, you have to know what's in the bank, right? How much money do you actually have, and what do you realistically think that will sustain you, right? When you actually do all the cost cutting or you do all the efficiency, what else can you bring to the bank account, and how long will that last you? There are that calculation, right? Again, very important element, because it's going to determine what you can do as you start to think about coming out the other side of the crisis. If you're running a business, other levers that you can use to improve potentially your liquidity position outside of looking for more money are things like the interactions that you have with your customers and your suppliers. First thing you probably have to understand is that there's many customers that you have that are in the same situation that you are, that are going to be looking to manage their outflow to you. And so it's important to realize that, to understand that it's not personal, but from their perspective, it's a business decision they have to make. And you have to be very engaging and be very willing to work with them so that if folks owe you money, you can in balance between your needs and their needs, but keep them engaged, keep them as a long-term customer, and keep them paying, right? As opposed to taking it personally and battling it out with them for something that you might get short-term, but will compromise you in the long term. And then you turn around and you talk to your suppliers strategically, and you say, okay, look, I'm running a business. I need to ensure that I am a long-term customer of yours. And with this hat of optimization and efficiency on cost, you need to be a little bit brave about talking to your suppliers and asking for ways that you can work with them to perhaps make the payment load a little lighter over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. And I think they'll appreciate, your willingness to have that conversation and your willingness to try to stay as an active business that will ultimately serve them well as customers over the long term. So managing payables, managing receivables, definitely sources of cash that you've earned, right, that you can have access to without looking outside for a bank or for money to come in through equity.
And I think you bring a very, very compelling point, which is in moments like this is a tremendous opportunity to really strengthen the relationships with your customers and your suppliers. And because I think that everybody is going through this. So I think that people would appreciate you working with them. And I think that suppliers, if they know, if they appreciate your relationship and they also think long-term, they might, should be willing to work with you because they know that, hey, if I help them now in their moment of need, I'm going to strengthen the relationship and they're going to be a customer for many years to come. So, and the same applies to the small business customers. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And likewise, if you don't show that flexibility, that willingness to work with people, it will, in the short term, might help you shore up or preserve liquidity, but in the long term, might hurt your business because these people at some point, once the pandemic and the crisis is over, they're going to remember that you were not willing to work with them. And as a result, you would have hurt your brand and your reputation and ultimately some clients.
No, totally agree, and great points about relationships. And, those relationships, as we'll talk about later, apply to your sources of capital, your banks, right, and your partners as well. But now, look, I think what we've said, right, is, hey, take stock of where you are, right? First thing is understand how much money is in the bank, right? Do a little belt tightening to try to get more.
Which, by the way, highlights the importance of really knowing your numbers, really being on top of your reporting, your financial reporting. That speaks to how important it is to have very strong, robust financials for your business and really knowing your business very well and knowing your numbers. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, and that's a great point too. I think there's a lot of folks that are afraid. Looking at numbers in this time that we are now, it's scary, right? Because it is a reflection of the environment and how it's impacting your business. But you've got to take a look, right? And you have to understand that it's a starting point. And what should make you feel comfortable is that, as Manuel has said, and we touched on, there are ways to improve your position. There are ways and the things that you do through belt tightening that will help. There are ways and the things that you do through managing the payables and the receivables that will help. but it's important for you to have that baseline understanding of where you are, because it gets you to a place where you can then honestly assess what you can do to improve that, but also how you need to prepare for when things are over and you're back in business. You'll learn to appreciate the fact that you do need relationships, that you may have to cut certain activities, but if you cut all of them, it really hurts your business, and that actually may not allow you to come back. So those decisions need to be made, strategic decisions need to be made in this financial context, and having a true understanding of where you are is really the only way that you can start to do that. In a meaningful way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we cover everything. Can we?
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Welcome to Latin Biz, Navigating Business Success Through the Pandemic. My name is Manuel Chinea. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Popular Bank. And with me today, we have...
I'm Eli Mendoza. I'm a partner at Cirrus Capital, and I'm a corporate and board advisor to Latin Biz.
Thank you, Eli. Today, the topic that we are going to discuss is what options are available to small businesses seeking infusions of capital and financing to again improve their liquidity position. And if you don't mind, being that I'm the banker in the I'll kick this off and then you can chime in. I'd like to start by talking a little bit about the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program. That was a very successful effort, and it's one of the reasons why I think that the economy has managed to stay relatively resilient through this pandemic period. As a bank that actively participated in this program, obviously, we originated more than 28,000 of these loans to small businesses in the markets where we operate. But this was a very successful across the U.S. I believe it was more than 4 or 5 million loans that been no, you know what? I think the loans are less. It's like, I don't know, the number that I have here, it says 1.7, but I'm pretty sure that number is much higher. Maybe I should just...
Millions. Maybe you say millions.
Millions.
You just start that sentence again, you say million. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just start again, and we'll do it one more time. So, all right. So welcome to Latin Business. So welcome to Latin Biz, Navigating Business Success Through the Pandemic series. And today, let me start.
You say, why don't you just start with your previous sentence? Because I think they're going to be able to chop it. Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So I'll just start with. Today we're going to be talking about what options are available to small businesses looking for liquidity and to improve the liquidity position. And being the banker in the group here, I'd like to kick us off, and then Eli, please jump in. I'd first like to start by talking a little bit about recapping the success of the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, which was a federal program that was very successful, and I think it was in large measure responsible for helping stabilize the economy somewhat. As you know, the Paycheck Protection Program was launched in April of this year, and it ended in August 8th, just recently. Millions of small businesses benefited from this program. The program, one of the advantages of this program is that if you as a business have the opportunity to apply and get approved and get a PPP loan, you have the opportunity to get that loan forgiven. So truly, this instead of being a loan, a traditional loan, can turn into capital for the business because again, the idea here is that if you can demonstrate that you maintain the employees in your business, there's a whole formula behind it, but there is a strong likelihood that you can get all or most of your loan forgiven and in a way becomes capital or a grant for your business. Now there is talk about the possibility of a fourth round of PPP loans. That is still being debated. Obviously, is subject to the Congress and the White House reaching an agreement on the next federal stimulus package. There's a lot of controversy there. They seem not to be able to come to an agreement or a compromise. The one good thing about PPP is that this is one of the few elements that has bipartisanship. So the odds are that there could be something once they finally reach an agreement on the next federal stimulus package. But there are other sources that are available right now, and one that I want to bring to the attention of our small businesses is the Main Street Lending Program. This was a program that was approved at the same time that PPP was approved. Obviously, PPP, because it has the opportunity to become a grant, grabbed all the headlines, and everybody wanted to just secure their PPP loan because obviously that could eventually turn into capital. The Main Street Lending Program is not going to be a grant, it's going to be a loan. So you have to repay whatever you get in Main Street Lending Program. However, there are some very clear advantages to the Main Street Lending Program. The terms under this program are very favorable. So just to give you an idea, and obviously my advice is that you go to your financial institution and talk to them about this program. If you have the need from a liquidity perspective, this would be a great opportunity for you. These are 5-year loans, and in the first year, you don't have to repay interest or principal. So that means that you get the money and you don't have to make loan payments in the first full year. So that, talking about securing and boosting your liquidity, that's great because you don't normally you take out a loan and 30 days after that you need to start repaying the loan. In this particular case, you don't have to do that. And even when you get to years 2, 3, and 4, you're paying a very small amount. And then in year 5 is where you have more of a bullet payment. But obviously in 5 years, odds are that you would have, overcome any difficulties that through this pandemic. And the critical thing is, the advantage of having no payments whatsoever in the next 12 months after you take out the loan, and then much smaller payments in the years after that, which again should be more than ample time for you to get to overcome the difficulties of the pandemic. It also has the opportunity that if you have a loan at unfavorable terms, you can refinance that loan. Now, there is a catch there that is more critical to the banks than to the individuals. The program doesn't allow a bank to refinance a loan that the customer has with the bank. But if the bank can refinance a loan that the customer has with another bank, if the terms of the Main Street program are more favorable. So again, a lot more details surrounding this program, but the good news is the program, after a delayed start, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of back and forth. Everything has been clarified. Banks are taking Main Street lending applications. We're one of the banks that are taking Main Street lending applications, and it's something that, again, whether you took advantage of PPP or not, you still qualify. for a Main Street lending program. So I think it's something that if you still, given that the pandemic, we don't suspect is going to obviously work itself out in the next 3-6 months, or this seems to be longer. And if you need more assistance on the liquidity front, a Main Street lending program might be a great vehicle for you and something worth looking into. And at least, and obviously you can go also and talk to a bank about the traditional loan, but obviously the Main Street lending program is going to provide you or afford you probably more favorable terms that you can get normally with a traditional loan, because this one has a government guarantee that allows the bank to and the program define exactly the terms and the pricing is very favorable. But I encourage small businesses to talk to their financial institution and inquire more about this program.
Yeah. Hey, Manuel, how do businesses think about qualifications? Is there a size qualification, or is there, are there things that they should be wary about or focused on, right, when coming for the program?
Yes, the program has a limitation of the business cannot be greater than or have more than 15,000 employees. Initially, it used to, at the very beginning, had a minimum number of employees that they fortunately removed, because initially I think the requirement was that this was designed for bigger businesses, and it required that you had to have at least 500 employees. They finally removed that, which I think it makes a lot of sense. So right now, it's basically the size of the business, and I have to double check this number, but I believe the revenue, there's also a limitation on revenue. The business cannot make more than $5 million in revenue, but that's $5 billion. So it just provides a lot of room for businesses, from small business all the way to large middle market companies to apply for this program.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, we did thought.
No, I'm sorry, Eli. I do want to warn individuals, and this is part of the information that the banks would share. There are restrictions in terms of distributions, in terms of what you can do in terms of dividends and payments. So it doesn't come without strings. Obviously, the government wants to make sure that if you're seeking this assistance, you're not going to turn around and all of a sudden distribute this assistance
liquidate your business.
Out to your principal with the program. But again, I think for some businesses, if they really have that need, and it's a really pressing need as far as liquidity is concerned, having those strings attached is a small price to pay.
Well, no, I was just going to mention, I mean, we talked in the previous segment about liquidity and about the things that you could do to manage cash better. And certainly the way that the payment terms are structured here, right, is another source of savings, right? At the same time that you're able to make sure that you've got enough cash cushion, you are in a position where you don't necessarily, I mean, you worry long-term, right? Obviously that you are keeping your business going and will ultimately pay back the loan. But in the short term, where there's so much uncertainty, right, there is such a big impact on businesses right now, and businesses are trying to manage keeping activities and keeping the brand, right, and their activities in the communities going. This is a perfect way almost to secure that capital and to get a little bit of a pass for a couple of years on paying things back, so long as you intend to stay in the business, right? Which I think, the series and what, we're really talking about. So.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention is that initially they were not eligible, and they also changed that. Not-for-profit organizations are eligible for the Main Street Lending Program. So I think that talking about, I mean, at the end of the day, they're not-for-profit, but they're still an enterprise, right? They're still a business. And a lot of not-for-profits are are suffering because unfortunately in moments of crisis, as people are
Mm-hmm.
shoring up liquidity in their own situation, many times one of the first places they do is they cut
Yeah.
back donations and grants to
Right.
not-for-profits. So a lot of not-for-profits
Right.
have seen their revenues, their fundraising drop dramatically, and that normally tends to be one of their main sources of revenue. So
Yeah.
again, things as the economy improves, as the situation, we overcome the crisis. I think that these not-for-profits can get back on their feet, but there's a gap there, and they live in for lack of a better term, paycheck to paycheck. I mean, they live fundraising cycle to fundraising cycle, and if they cannot secure some additional liquidity for the next 12 months or a little
Yeah.
longer, they might unfortunately not be
Yeah.
around for when the
Yeah.
economy recovers. So this is a great way also for some of these not-for-profits to be able to write this out and be around,
Mm.
so they can after the pandemic, it's over.
Yeah. Great. Good. Well, look, we're going to have one more segment, and it's going to touch a little bit on equity as well. But equity is again another source of capital for businesses. There's a broader ownership implication to that. But the equity markets, as most folks would know, continue to be pretty strong, right? And I think there is a strategy around raising equity, and the decision to do so is a more strategic one. But equity as a source of capital is an interesting alternative, especially if you start looking at your networks, your communities, your smaller ecosystem that understands you and the business, right? Equity, can sometimes be a great source to bring other people in, new ideas, new ways to do things, new relationships that might lead to better customer or supplier terms or longer term relationships and sustainability. So I'd say there isn't as much detail or how to, right, on the equity front for this segment, but I would say that folks should keep in the back of their mind, right, that as you go through, cost savings and managing receivables and looking at PPP and Main Street lending, that then there is a fifth element almost, which is the equity piece, that you can give consideration to broader implications for sure, but the markets are open, right? And there's plenty of investors that are looking for opportunities to work with businesses that have values or that share the values that they do, right, longer term, and that are committed not to necessarily just take in capital and, for short-term purposes or short-term investor purposes, but really because a lot of our small businesses, we know that once the pandemic, right, subsides, are going to have a great role, right, in the new normal. And so equity capital is definitely very vigilant and on the lookout for those kinds of opportunities. But like I said, it's a little bit more of a strategic dialogue because now you're talking about reducing your ownership in your business,
Sure.
which is a very personal and a very difficult decision.
But by the same token, Eli, would you say that this could also present an opportunity for strategic moves where you could, perhaps merge, consolidate with some of your competitors, or, it could be, where you're selling or you're buying, or but looking, because I think that in moments like this, when you combine two organizations, it presents the opportunity for synergies, and that can ultimately result in a stronger organization. The resulting organization can be stronger.
Correct.
I wonder what your take on that is, given that you play in that
Correct.
space.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. You're spot on with this is certainly a time that lends itself to doing that. and for all the reasons that you described, right? One, because two different businesses going after the same market, which now looks smaller, makes a lot of sense to have a combination about whether or not it's better to do it together, and to come out stronger again once the pandemic subsides and the markets begin to recover. So it is a perfect opportunity to have that discussion. The better off financially you are, financially liquidity or liquidity strength that you have, the better position you'll find yourself being able to have those discussions and feeling like you can negotiate from a position of strength. Right? So it goes back to the fundamentals that we talked about in the first segment. You just have to be healthy and strong, regardless of what's going on around you, and do everything. Keep doing the exercise, right, that you need to be doing to stay in shape, because these opportunities are coming up, and you want to be in a position where you can pursue them, and where it makes sense for you to pursue them, and where you can participate in the long term in seeing that vision through. But absolutely, it is a really good time to consider that. So.
Great. Okay, well, I think that we cover that topic.
Number two.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think we can move on to topic number 3,
yeah.
which is more the how.
3. Yes. So the how. What was that titled?
Yeah, I think that instead of saying what are some of the ways, we just should say how can small businesses prepare to seek financing and opportunities amid this crisis. So however, if you want, I can kick it off, or you can kick it off however you want.
Well, why don't we do that? And why don't you kick it off? But I would also just note that I think there's some elements of the previous segment that they might be able to pull into this one. Mm-hmm. Right? Some of what you talked about, some of what I talked about, I think is going to lend itself to maybe putting in this section as well, if they can find the break point. As my sense is this is going to go a little faster, right? Yeah. To this how. Which it should, and it could just be supplemented by, right? Yeah. We went a little long on the other one, so.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll just introduce ourselves again, just name and.
Yep.
Okay. So it's Latin navigating business success. Is it navigating?
It's navigating. It's navigating
the success through the pandemic. Okay.
Through the pandemic. Yep.
All right. Welcome to Latin Biz Navigating Business Success Through the Pandemic series. This is our 3rd segment, and my name is Manuel Chinea. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Popular Bank, and with me today is
Eli Mendoza. I'm Eli Mendoza. I changed
Let's do it again.
Yeah, go again.
So when I stop, I'm just gonna, and with me today, I'm gonna turn it over so you
okay, there we go.
run with it.
Got
okay.
It.
And then, so. Welcome to Latin Biz, Navigating Business Success Through the Pandemic series. This is our 3rd segment. My name is Manuel Chinea. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, blah, blah, blah. Let me say it again. Welcome to Latin Biz, Navigating Business Success Through the Pandemic series. This is our 3rd segment. My name is Manuel Chinea. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Popular Bank. And with me today
is Eli Mendoza. I'm a partner at Cirrus Capital, and I'm a corporate and board advisor at Latin Biz.
Okay, so the topic for our 3rd and final segment is how can small businesses prepare to seek the financing options and opportunities, financing and liquidity options and opportunities amid the health crisis. And let me kick this off first from the bank perspective, and then Eli will talk a little bit more about the market in terms of other sources of capital. From a bank perspective, obviously the critical thing here in terms of how to prepare to seek the financing options in the middle of this pandemic is first to try to inform yourself as much as possible what's available. Obviously, you can do some research online and try to understand what's available out there, but also contact your financial institution, and they'll be more than happy to provide you information in terms of what's available and what are some of the options. I think that when you're contacting a financial institution, it is critical that you come prepared. Um, there, one of the critical things here that, and I think we touched on it in the previous segments, is that you really need to have a great handle on your numbers. You need to understand your operation, your numbers. You need to understand your cash flow very well. And you need to have very robust financial reporting. Whenever trying to secure financing, that's one of the critical elements in any financing transaction, is that the bank obviously doesn't know your business as well as you do. So the way that the bank gets to know your business is through your financial reporting, and any additional color that you can provide in terms of a business plan. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the financial institution. Again, the financial institution at the end of the day is tasked with, yes, lending this money, but securing the repayment of that money. So the bank will need very good information so we can determine that there is a source of repayment of that money. So again, having very good financial reporting, if you have a business plan, that is always a positive, a very strong positive, because banks want to know that what are you thinking, especially in the middle of what we're going through. A lot of small businesses have had to adapt and make a lot of changes. So revenue has been impacted. So the past is not necessarily as much an indication of the future as it used to be. In a stable environment, when you are looking at financials, you kind of predict, okay, this is how the business have behaved for the past 2 or 3 years, so we can extrapolate that the business will continue to behave that way. What happens in a situation like today is that obviously that there's a tremendous amount of disruption. If you're in some of those businesses where you had to close your operations for a prolonged period of time, your revenues have been dramatically impacted. So all of a sudden, the big concern of the bank is, okay, even though they were doing well all the way up through the end of 2019, in 2020, they've been impacted this way. So how's the future going to look? Are they going to be able to get back to the way it used to be? So having that that information and that vision available and documented when talking to a bank, I think it's something that can help you tremendously in securing that financing, building the confidence in the bank that yes, this is a temporary setback, but they have a very clear plan and path to getting back to the way it was. And as a result, I think that you enhance your chances of securing that financing. And again, I think that, and we touched on it on the previous segment, that because of all this uncertainty, I think that without federal guarantees, government guarantees, or the government serving as a backstop, banks would be more strict and more conservative in their approach, because again, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of, can these small businesses get back on their feet after through this pandemic. But as we share in the previous segment, there was the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. There is a program that is still active and running, which is Main Street Lending Program. That those programs give, because they have the backing of the federal government, give commercial banks the confidence that, okay, this is a business. They are going through a setback right now. They have they have very good reporting, financial reporting. They have a good business plan, and now with the backing of the government, we feel more confident in helping these organizations. Now, don't get me wrong, I also know that there are some small businesses that, because of the nature of their business during the pandemic, they've been doing well. Their revenues have not been as affected. And obviously, the pandemic, depending on the type of business, might have presented opportunities for them to grow. And they might need liquidity for a different reason than businesses that are struggling. They might need liquidity because they want to expand. They have a lot of demand for their products, and now they need liquidity just to expand and grow their business. And certainly those are businesses that can come to the bank, and similarly to what I said, the reporting and the business plan and laying out what they're trying to accomplish, I think can secure credit without any type of government guarantee.
Right.
So those are things that the companies, I think, need to look at and work on as they get ready to go to a financial institution to try to secure financing. Any thoughts on that, Eli?
Look, that's very very comprehensive. I think that's great advice. Looking at the equity side, I would say a business plan, right, is a must, right? So as you take a step back, right, and you are again looking at different alternatives, equity is one of them, right? But again, a very strategic and a different kind of decision, because in raising equity, you're going to give up part of your ownership. There are sources of equity that specialize in helping businesses grow through difficult situations, as well as helping businesses accelerate growth. And through maybe this situation, or generally in the market, because businesses happen to be positioned well for what's coming in terms of next generation products and services and customers. So you will find that equity exists for a bunch of different problems that a small business is looking to solve. So important to have in your mind a clear understanding of what is your business, what is your market opportunity, what do you deliver, as well as or better than others in that market, and why are you excited, right, about the opportunity, if not today because of the challenges of the pandemic, in the future, or if today because of the challenges of the pandemic, explaining what it looks like afterwards, right? So that business strategy, business plan, very, very critical for you to understand, and for you to be able to articulate very crisply and very cleanly, right, to folks that are in a position to potentially be your partner. You have to, from an equity perspective, again, because you are giving up ownership, right, or some level of ownership, you also have to decide for yourself, what is it that you need that's more than just capital? Do you need a partner that is perhaps an expert in a new market that your business is trying to penetrate, either a new geography, a new city, right? Or is it a new service that makes sense for you to offer because your customers have been asking more about it, but you don't know as much, right? Is it that you're looking really just for capital and you want somebody to be silent, excited about your business opportunity, but more silent? Is it, that you want somebody that has a big network and can introduce you to a number of people that can bring you new ideas, new ways of seeking customers, new suppliers, or just can elevate your brand generally? Those things are important to consider, because you will find that more often than not, when you reach out for equity financing, you will have a number of interested people, and it's for you to decide, where you want to narrow that target of folks that you're going to consider. And so your partnership needs are very, very important. And then we go back to the previous segments, right? It is absolutely positively important that you are able to talk to somebody about where you are today relative to your finances and relative to your position. Equity investors by nature are more optimistic. So they will, if told the story, right, in a positive, logical, right, and analytically supported way, they are inclined to, to get excited with you. But we'll need to understand that you actually have the financing and the operational things in place to be able to reach those goals and reach those objectives, or at least that they can help you do that. But you have to have some basis by which you approach them. And I would say that understanding your financials and being able to articulate your story through those financials is a very, very important element of it all. And so there's a good number of sources that are out there, right? I'm not going to name specific sites or specific, venture capitalists or merchant banks. But if you do your research, right, and I think this is where financial advisors, bankers could also be helpful, you'll find very quickly that those that know you the best can gravitate you towards people that are like-minded, and that actually have the capital and may be, excited not to take, the business from you, but to grow the business into something bigger that both of you could share. So that's what I'd say on the equity side.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point that I didn't touch on, that I think that it's very important. And you talk about, the transparency of, making sure that, you can be optimistic, but at the same time, you want to be transparent and realistic about what you're presenting. And I think one of the, and that's very important when trying to secure financing, because if you come with a pie in the sky type of a plan, or if you present projections that just seem too rosy, you lose credibility with this institution, and that's not something that you want. And the other thing is that if it's an existing financial institution you've been working with, and you already have some type of financing, I think that banks know that right now we're in the middle of a crisis, and that most companies have been negatively impacted by the situation. So I think that it serves you well to be very proactive and transparent with your financial institution, and come up and say, hey, listen, this is what's happening in my business. I know I'm confident I can overcome it, but I need some additional liquidity for a period of time to tide me over to hopefully 6 months, 12 months, when the situation has normalized. And that's a lot better position to be in than wait for you to not be able to meet an obligation, and then at that point, after you fail to meet an obligation with your bank, then tell them that you're in trouble. That you don't want to be in that situation, because typically, I mean, your bank might still be willing to work with you, very likely, but it still goes to the issue of trust, and it undermines the trust with your financial institution. So the earlier you raise your hand and you say, listen, I'm having some issues, and I might need some flexibility here. What can you offer me? How can you help me? Banks will appreciate that. I know that we will, and we certainly are going to be eager to work with you and try to figure things out. So I think that that's an important point, and I forgot to mention it, but thank you for reminding me.
No, look, I think transparency and trust, right? We could probably not close on a better, set of words, I think, with respect to all of what we talked about. So.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Likewise.
Doing this panel for these series with Latin Biz.
And
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks all. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So I think we're
all right.
We can go. All
good.
Right. Let's see. Hopefully they don't need anything else from us, and they can do their magic.
A lot of makeup.
Yeah. Take care, Eli.
All
Pleasure
right.
meeting you. You know, hopefully
Thank
when
you.
this thing
Likewise.
normalizes, at some point we can grab
Yeah,
lunch or
absolutely.
coffee or a drink
Yeah, that'd be
in the
great.
city. Okay. Take care.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye. Bye.